Welcome to the More Perfect Union, a podcast that offers real debate without the hate. I'm the 2022 new and improved Kevin Kelton, and I am here with my cohorts in podcast crime, Greg Matusak.
Unfortunately, I'm the 2022 unimproved Greg Matusak. They changed my model to be even worse. Gosh, this. I'm glad you got an upgrade because I sure as shit didn't.
And also with us is Ward Anderson.
No longer the baby new year of the More Perfect Union podcast. I am here and happy to be here with the baby new year of the More Perfect Union podcast.
And joining us today is a new friend of the podcast, Joe Siart. And Joe he's known as Producer Joe on a podcast that I caught called the Working Fans Podcast, or the Working Fans Comedy Cast. I guess the Comedy Cast is a subset of the Working Fans Podcast. Is that right, Joe?
Yeah, we started off as the Working Fans Podcast. By the way, I've made New Year's resolutions, already broken them. But we started off as the Working Fans Podcast, and then to get a little out of our niche, we expanded into comedy and MMA. So you'll either catch us on the Working Fans Podcast, the Working Fans Comedy Cast, or the Working Fans Combat Cast.
And you started off, the topic at hand when you started off, I believe, was pro wrestling. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what we started with because that was our earliest interest. And then when my friends wanted to start a podcast, they wanted to start pro wrestling. I was just happy to get on a mic and talk anything. And it just helps that it's something that I've liked for a while and watched currently.
I used to watch this when I was a kid, going back to a guy named Haystacks Calhoun. Does that name mean anything to you?
Oh, yeah. One of the original big men. Yeah. And it's weird because what would be a big man those days would just be like the average person you're trying to avoid at Walmart now.
Right.
It's just a hefty individual.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Now they're probably 6'6" and a lean 260. But back then, he was like a guy who was like 5'10", 5'11", probably 220.
He's a guy that's definitely driving around with that handicap cart, just putting things in the front. And he doesn't just have the motorized cart. He's got the cart tied to the back of it. Just following him around like a little dog, like throwing it over his head, hoping it hits.
Anyways, let's get to, and since we're on the topic of comedy, because we're going to start the news of the week on some very, very sad news, which is we just learned before we came on the air tonight that comedian and actor Bob Saget has left us. Bob was, I think, 65. I knew him very well from my early days as a stand-up comic. We hung out together for a while in the late 70s, early 80s. Very nice guy, a comics comic. I think what you're going to see in the next few days is an outpouring of tributes, the likes of which you probably did not expect for somebody like Bob Saget.
And they're already coming in. It's already snowballed, right? It's something that by the time you people are listening to this at home or wherever, it's old news, so to speak, like everyone knows. But we just found out within the hour and already, the tributes are coming in, the stories and things like that. I don't know that I've met anyone in my career that has told me that fucking Bob Saget story, right?
You will not find it. You will not find it. Yeah.
You hear stories like that about, Kevin Kelton or maybe me or, different people. Definitely me, not as much as Kevin, but you definitely will hear it about me and other people, right? I'm just saying, I've never heard anyone tell me a story about Bob Saget that was not, man, I had a great time, or God, he was so great. He just seemed like such a affable guy.
He was a likable guy. He just got along with everyone.
So it's funny that you all say that because I was just speaking to my mother-in-law before we started doing the podcast, and she said, well, did you hear about Bob Saget? And I said, yeah, it's really sad. And she was like, he's the nicest man. I've always thought he was on TV. I said, did you know him? She goes, no. But he seemed like the nicest man. And then she proceeded to tell the story about how many, many years ago, her and a girlfriend of hers went and saw him at a comedy club. And she goes, but then, Greg, would you believe this? He said the filthiest things and the dirtiest. And I said, Yes, that was part of, he was pretty well known for. And she goes, I thought at first it was like that he was going to stop, but he didn't, and we had to get up and leave.
Yeah, he had always, even before Family Matters, he was always one of the bluer comics to work at the Comedy Store. But again,
Full House,
funny.
by the way, Full House.
Oh, thank
Full
you.
House.
What did I say?
Family Matters.
Family Matters.
Oh, thank you. Full House. Absolutely. Yeah.
I was thinking for Bob Saget, I wanted to ask you guys, maybe as comedians, is there ever the time where you get that good paying gig that gets you notoriety, but then there's that part of you that's like, I'm not doing what I think is funny. I'm not doing what I would consider art. And maybe his act for a little bit was being able to express that side of himself.
Oh, I think that's very true.
Absolutely. I think you could say that about so many. I mean, yes, I've had those moments in my career, sure. But there are many, many comedians who will say that about themselves, that, I can't just off the top of my head name somebody, right? But as the show goes on, I remember, like later I'll tell you. But yeah, there's been plenty of famous comedians who felt that they were, I can name one right now. Jimmy Walker.
Yeah.
Jimmy Walker was a household name. This is another one where people forget, like, what a household name this guy, what a celebrity this guy was in the late 70s with Good Times. And Jimmy Walker still tours and still performs comedy clubs everywhere. And he'll do it, but he really doesn't like saying dynamite. He really doesn't like it. And I've been told he doesn't want it in the press materials and stuff like that, but it's followed him and we're talking 40 years since that. And he's still got it. Pauly Shore, I would say, is the same way.
Yeah. And I took writing jobs on shows that I, weren't my first or second choice, but you take them because that's what you get offered. Yeah.
Right. The saying is, gig spelled backwards is gig.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I like that.
So I'm going to try for a third time to bring up Sidney Poitier because I just don't want the podcast to go on without acknowledging what a tremendous contribution he made to the world that we know now. I mean, I don't think that people who weren't watching his work in the 60s and 70s realize that he took race relations 3 steps higher than they were throughout several of his performances. In the Heat of the Night, my God, a milestone in entertainment. And
guess who's coming to dinner?
Light. Guess who's coming to dinner?
To Sir with Love.
Yeah.
The thing about Sidney Poitier is that because he was 94, right? Because he slowed down in recent years and even started taking more lighthearted gigs, I think there's a whole more than one generation that doesn't know what an iconic actor this man was and the ceilings he broke, right? Because he kind of, like I said, he quieted down over the years. But there was a time when Sidney Poitier showed up to do an interview or something. It was like, oh my God, it was considered like, he was held in such high esteem because he also wasn't one to, he wasn't very public. He wasn't he was pretty private with his life. He wasn't always, I don't know what the word, ubiquitous or whatever. You know what I'm saying? He came in and he did his work, he stunned people, and then he went on to the next project. But he was quite the influence on many actor of the day.
Okay, so now let's take a look at the things happening in politics in Washington, D.C. The anniversary of January 6th just came and went, and Biden made a big speech. Guys, what were your thoughts on all of that?
All right. This was the speech. Well, first of all, I obviously liked the speech. I thought it set the right tone. The only problem I had for the speech was this was the speech that he should have given on January 20th last year. This should have been his inauguration speech, and this should have been like, hey, we're done dicking around on this. Hey, he should have called it for what instead of a year and 2 weeks later, like, hey, that sucked back then. It should have been 2 weeks later. President Trump, you were to blame for this. You spread this big lie because at that point, other people would have said, like, yeah, I remember that. That was 2 weeks ago. That sucked. I really like the fact that he has been a very, very calming effect on this country, or at least half the country. We haven't had to worry about how we spell hamburgers, and it's been great. But now he's like, we're done. We're done with the lies. We're done with this. Let's get back to issues that matter.
Yeah. I was surprised to see a current president take on a former president so directly as he did. Not that it wasn't deserved. I was just surprised.
I think it's a fine line you run making a speech like that, because it's the speech that needs to be made, but it also gives the other side such a chance to say, and to turn the argument around and say, look, he's attacking our president. He's attacking your president because your president was reckless with how he acted back then. And to be in power and do nothing when that's happening, you should have harsh words taken against you.
Yeah, good points. And, obviously everybody knows that, as Greg, you wrote it in our rundown, it's half the country has amnesia about what they said a year ago. People who at the time or in the days following were condemning the behavior of January 6th are now like, it was just one day in January. They had one of those things where they go out and they interview people, real people on the street, and to show just how brainwashed, and I hope I'm not going to offend anyone, how stupid Americans can be, because they had clip after clip after clip of people saying, no, that was the Democrats. No, Republicans would never act that way. The whole thing was a false flag. And I'm watching this and I'm thinking, forget about the fact that these people believe that. Let's just put that on the back burner for a minute. Whenever I've been on television in some capacity like that, or anyone I know was interviewed, they're going to be on the news, you tell all your friends, you go, hey, guess what? I was at the park tonight and there was a CNN crew there and they interviewed me. I think I'm going to be on at 7:00 on CNN or on CBS or on the Today Show.
Dude, I use that as a TV credit on my resume.
And so these people are no different. They have to go out and tell their friends, hey, guess what? I talked to a CNN reporter tonight. I'm going to be on the news tonight. Check it out. And then you tune in and you watch the report and you realize they're mocking you. And then the people that come on right after it are mocking how fucking stupid you are. I wonder how those people feel.
All right. I'm going to tell a quick story about that real quick. When Marge Schatz died, okay, she was one of the first female owners of a major sports franchise, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And she passed away. She owned the Cincinnati Reds. I happened to be downtown with someone and they said, hey, would you say something nice about Marge Schatz? And I said, Marge Schatz, excuse me. And I said, yeah, you know what? I said, I think it was a shame that, one of the first female owners was not really treated as well as she probably should have been, right? And the guy standing with, they said, what about you? He goes, no, I'm Jewish. I've decided I'm not going to say anything on air because it won't be nice. And I looked at him and he goes, yeah, you don't remember that whole Nazi thing about her, do you? And I said, no, I guess I forgot about that. Because they went and they found on an interview, they found a bunch of Nazi armbands and it really did not make her look good. And she said a whole bunch of racist things. And anyways, my family mocked me for years because I said, hey, I'm going to be on TV defending it was terrible. But yeah. You're absolutely right. And I think
they mocked you before that too.
They mocked me before that. But besides the man on the street or the woman on the street, the person on the street, we had leaders like Kevin McCarthy, Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, who were saying, look, this is Trump. Trump did this. Trump has gone over the line. And now they're like, hey, I think this has been all overblown. We shouldn't really talk about this. Can't we move on? I think that I know a lot of them are afraid of being primaried. And there's that whole Trump effect that, if Trump says, hey, I'm going to endorse someone against you, they will probably win because they're a incumbent candidate, but they are going to have to spend lots of money. And then they're all going to have to say, no, I'm the Trumpiest Trump that ever trumped.
I've said on this show numerous times that my issue with the Democrats is that they don't have a spine and that they are so great at snatching defeat from the jaws of victory that they win and then they don't know how to win. As in, they're too busy trying to explain what they do when they've got to learn to just say it in the basest way possible. For some reason in America, we really don't want to admit that a good portion of America is fucking stupid. That doesn't mean they're not good people. And I think somebody came to Biden and finally went, dude, look at social media. Look at how Americans talk to each other these days. We got to stop pretending that we're all friends. We're not. Yeah. It's time for you to start talking to the people out there who are fed up with the stupid people on the other side. And that's flat out it. Okay.
Yeah.
And the thing that I noticed with the January 6th Republicans is that they have embraced, and wisely so, pandering to the stupid people. They just have. Now, this is not me saying that Republicans are stupid or all conservatives are stupid. I'm not saying that. But you cannot listen to a Lindsey Graham, anything he says nowadays, and not see a guy that is pandering to the dumbest fucking people that vote for him. He is. I'm sorry. Look at the way the guy has flip-flopped and all this. Remember when flip-flopping was going to cost John Kerry an election?
Yeah.
Holy shit. Lindsey Graham and the Republicans do that constantly now. And this is what I've begun to notice. And that's what's happening with the January 6th thing. Republicans know who their base is now, and they pander to them. And hopefully Biden's speech was a sign of him learning that Democrats have to do that too, the other way around.
I don't want to bring it back to pro wrestling, but in his last 4 years, Trump has used pro wrestling to the utmost. And the best way you pander to stupid people is you do the pro wrestling thing. You say what they want to hear, you get them riled up, and then you get them behind you. It's something that scared me over the last 4 years because the amount of people that will be misled by the way the media is portraying Trump's message, leave it alone that I think Trump's message is almost dangerous in itself. But then when you get it filtered through the media and you give it to basic people who don't maybe necessarily critical think a ton of stuff, you get this scary message that lands in their lap and they'll be on Trump's side forever because he's saying what they want to hear. And that's just what I've noticed a lot in the last 4 years. And it's, how do you combat that?
Yeah.
Especially when Trump...
You combat it with the good people of Connecticut, because the good people of Connecticut know what I'm talking about. Isn't that right, Joe?
Exactly. And see, I'm on his side now, but that's how you do it. You got to play to those little things, and people don't realize it, but Trump is in the WWE Hall of Fame, sadly. He knows what he's doing more than we might like to admit.
Yeah. Same crowd.
Totally.
Same crowd. So
better than those losers in Cincinnati. Am I right, Connecticut?
Oh, don't get me started about that. You know, but Connecticut, I won't get into it. I'm not starting a war between Connecticut and Cincinnati this week.
Yeah, I'll start a war between us and Rhode Island because they're right on the border. Well, I'll go across. I'll fight them on their own.
Oh shit!
The belt, I got it somehow.
My local high school started a war with Rhode Island. We kicked the shit out of them.
They're like the Croatia of states. You know,
Yeah,
they can't beat anybody.
Yeah, way to punch down there.
Aren't they really the upscale outlet mall of the United States? I mean, let's just be honest.
I look at them as the Massachusetts with a better accent.
Well, there go 100 listeners that we just lost. Okay.
Massachusetts knows I love them.
So I wanted to do this one thing before we get off the topic of the Biden administration. I do want to take a look at wrapping up his first year in office, because a lot of people are so, worn down by the politics and the coverage of politics that's been going on that it may not feel like it's only been not even a year since the man put his hand on the Bible and took the oath of office. And everyone is already writing this guy's political obituary. And I see a lot of talk about, if it's not Kamala Harris, who's going to run? He can't run. He's too old. He's too this. I just want to remind our listeners of what I'm sure you guys are aware of, which is first years are much different than a 4-year term. And if you look back at the first year or even the first 2 years of a lot of successful presidential administrations, you'll see presidents who looked like they were in a really bad position coming out of their first year. Going back to the Reagan administration, had terrible inflation. They had the Beirut barracks bombing, but they had tremendously bad press coming out of their first or second year. And he was not only reelected, but went on to be a beloved former president. Bill Clinton, terrible first 2 years. His Democratic majority was wiped clean in the 1994 midterms. One of the worst shellackings in history, second, I think, only to Obama's actually. And he got reelected. Then, yes, you go to Barack Obama. Coming out of the first year, a lot of people may not remember this. The Democrats had what they thought were 60 votes in the Senate to pass the ACA, what's now called Obamacare. Then there was an election for a seat in Massachusetts. And the woman that was running, I believe her name was Martha Coakley, lost to Scott Brown, and the Senate was suddenly 59-41, which meant the Democrats didn't have the votes to pass Obamacare. This was just after his first year in office. And I remember people writing the obituary of the Obama administration and the obituary for Obamacare, that it was never, ever, ever going to become law. I remember seeing really smart Democrats like Barney Frank on television saying, that's it, it's done. We lost this one. And so I see people now talking about, ooh, Joe Manchin says he's not going to vote for the Build Back Better program, so it's dead. It's dead in the water. It's not. And neither is this administration. Also, just to throw one more in there, George W. Bush was a joke. He was a joke his first 9 months. All right. And somehow turned 9/11 into something that made him popular. To me, I actually still look at that and I think that's crazy, because I honestly believe had a major terrorist attack like that happened with Obama, or God forbid happened with Biden, it would ruin them. It did happen with Biden. Biden lost 13 people in a terrorist attack, and they're ready to burn him at the stake. George Bush lost 3,000 people, and they hailed him as a conquering hero. And by the way, and that was his screw up, because his administration had been warned. There were people like Tenet at the CIA who said, I was walking into the Oval Office like my hair was on fire, warning them about the potential for this kind of an attack, and they didn't heed my warnings. Yeah. So, I mean, this is what I mean. Like I'm just saying, you're right. You can't just judge on the first year, but also look at the flip side. Now a punchline, and everyone jokes about him when it comes to his term. Okay. But Jimmy Carter had a great 3 years. Yeah. As far as I remember, Jimmy Carter had a solid few years, and then his last year was so disastrous that his presidency became a joke. Right. But I've heard historians all the time talk about, if you look at his first 3 years, he had high approval ratings. Everything seemed okay. People, you know what I mean? We were coming out of the Nixon going strong coming out of the Ford recession. The Egypt-Israeli peace accords were a huge accomplishment that still stand today. Yeah. Yeah. This also just proves to me that there is no liberal media. That's why I always laugh at the whole liberal media thing, because I'm watching the media now who a month after Trump won were going, I don't think Democrats will ever find someone to beat him. To a year into Biden, they're going, oh, there will never be a Democrat president again in the history of this country. And you're like, what the fuck?
Wait, real quick though. Was it that bad of a year? Unemployment's down, the economy is up, we have more vaccination, and I know COVID is bad, but and additionally, like the whole gas thing, everyone was like, oh, gas is so high, and granted, the president has nothing to do with that until he did, and he's like, you know what, here's time where I'm stepping in and I'm making sure the gas price is lower. I hear you people, I'm listening. And it was fixed. Right now, gas is lower in Ohio, which is a great state, than it's been in like 2 years, 3 years. And people aren't like, oh, thank you, Biden. They're just like, oh, well, I guess it's Tuesday. But that's a direct result of Biden. Passed I brought that up to the largest infrastructure bill since the 50s and maybe ever.
Right, you guys, I'm still trying to figure out what's so shitty about last year. Right, I mean, I really am. Look, I'm not going to say that, oh my God, it was a great year. We're still in the middle of a pandemic, right? Sure. Right. But I still stop. And when I hear all this and, everyone hates Biden, his approval ratings down, I go, I mean, oh my God, I feel way less stress in 2021 than I did in 2020. I don't know what everyone's talking about. Yeah. And I'm saying this, I want people to tell me, because I'm genuinely asking. I'm not mocking anyone who says it sucks and Biden sucks. I want to know why. Right. Because I look at the past year and I go, inflation, and they'll say Afghanistan, and they'll say he's old. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Things I've heard have just dealt with COVID. Like I was reading articles that were coming out against how he said he was going to take care of COVID and it hasn't been handled. But you've also got like the misinformation that he's got to deal with a year prior to that. And I work with people right now that aren't vaccinated, and they actually said, like, you can't make me wear a mask at work. And it's granted, you're allowed to have those feelings, but there was something in place over the last few years that made people think that more. And he's had to work uphill against that. You're not going to defeat COVID by trying to break years of misinformation.
Yeah. And the same people who won't wear masks and won't get vaccinated are now saying he hasn't done anything about COVID.
Right.
That's the thing that you can do, and they're refusing to do it. And then they turn around and they say he fucked up on COVID.
Like, and the funny thing is when there is talk of him doing something about it, then he's a tyrant. Whenever there's talk about mask mandates, oh, he's a tyrant. When there's talk about vaccine mandates, oh, he's a tyrant. It's like, how would you like him to magically fix COVID in a way that doesn't inconvenience anyone? I don't know what fucking world you live in where the president will come in and take his pen out and sign a piece of paper and COVID goes away.
Well, that's what they want.
You don't have to do anything.
They want an executive order against COVID.
And then they'll complain about executive orders. So I'm going to jump ahead because we're running long and I want to get to the fun stuff, which is our TV and film reviews.
We don't ever run long, Kevin.
Don't ever run long.
Jesus, what's different about this new year? Fucking Joe.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So I want to ask you guys about a couple of things that have been on lately. 2 on streaming services, the movies Don't Look Up and Being the Ricardos. And then, I don't know whether you saw it, but in the theaters, there's that latest Matrix film. I'm going to just throw it open to anybody who wants to comment on any of those.
Okay, so Don't Look Up was on recently. And in the first, I'm not going to spoil anything, but in the first 15 minutes, Leonardo DiCaprio has this bushy beard and then they trim it. And his family goes, wow, Dad, they trimmed your beard. It looks really great. You're really handsome. And after that, he starts banging everybody.
Right.
That's what's different.
Right. And all of a sudden from
you trimmed your beard.
Wait. He's got this bushy beard and then it goes to stubble. And my wife says, hey, if you trim your beard, you look just like Leonardo DiCaprio. I thought about that and I go, okay. So the next day she's out doing her thing. I get my razor. I go, I trim it and I go, oh, shit. I look nothing like Leonardo DiCaprio. And my kids and wife, and all they do is laugh at me for 20 minutes because all I did was I shaved my glorious beard down to nothing, and it's horrible looking.
No, dear listeners, let me tell you,
it's
Greg
not.
hasn't looked better in a long time. He looks terrific.
Better. You look better now than I've seen you, and you never looked bad. I'm not kidding you, listeners.
I had a glorious beard, and now it's gone.
Yes, you had a glorious beard, but I'm going to be honest with you. You look better without a glorious beard. I'm sorry. All Greg did was shave his beard down, dear listeners, and he looks 10 years young. He's still got a beard, and it's white, for God's sake.
He looks very white.
No, you know what? From now on, you're fuckable Santa. That's what I'm calling you because...
I feel bad. I feel like anytime Greg does something, he almost gets mocked for it. He does this thing that he's think's gonna be this big glorious thing. Like, I'm gonna be on TV tonight. I put over my mark.
I'm going to praise Nazis. Oh, shit.
He's like, I'm gonna shave my beard. I'm gonna look good for my wife, and she's gonna be like, I was fucking with you. I didn't tell you.
You look nothing like Leonardo DiCaprio.
No, but this is it though. It's because Greg does these things and then thinks he looks awful when he doesn't. That's what I mean. Like Greg will be like, and then I saved the 4 kids from drowning, and I looked stupid while doing it. We're like, you saved 4 kids from drowning.
I saved 4 kids, and then the back of my underwear fell right out.
That's it. That's what he'll focus. That's Greg for you, Joe. That's Greg.
And that is our review of the movie Don't Look Up.
And yeah, there were a lot of other famous people in there too, but none of them had beards. So I'm going to just leave it at that.
I've been avoiding Don't Look Up just to wait for all the talk about it actually to die down. That sounds crazy, but I don't want to watch it in the midst of all of that. But I will say I really enjoyed Being the Ricardos. And I know that there was a lot of liberty taken with it. I've found people really harsh with Nicole Kidman because I know originally people really wanted Deborah Messing to do this part because Deborah Messing, I think, either campaigned for it or has been wanting to play Lucille Ball for years or whatever. I think both of them did amazing jobs in the roles that they were doing. I think people look too much when it comes to biopics for the celebrity to be a mirror image of the person that they're portraying. And that's unrealistic. No one's ever going to just be able to perfectly channel another person, a celebrity like that, right? I think Nicole Kidman did a great job. Again, like I said, there's liberties taken with it. The timeline doesn't actually match up to what was going on in that particular time in their lives or whatever, but I found it enjoyable nonetheless. I have a love-hate relationship with Aaron Sorkin because I do think he's a brilliant writer. I do think he's an excellent writer and he writes great dialogue, but I also think he speaks through his characters. So a lot of times, a lot of the characters sound like Aaron Sorkin is talking to himself.
Yeah. There's that super quick Dorothy Parker kind of banter that I just don't believe that Lucille Ball and Ricky Ricardo and the woman that played Ethel, Vivian Vance, I just don't believe that they talked like that.
Oh, it's like watching Gilmore Girls.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and that's an Aaron Sorkin thing that can often irritate me. Not always, but it can. Like, it didn't bother me with Jobs, the Steve Jobs movie, right? But I couldn't watch the final season of The Newsroom because of that, because I finally went, I cannot take another scene of 5 people equally witty and quippy having a conversation where they're out quipping each other and also each knows statistics off the top of their heads that are accurate. It just, it got to be too much.
Well, I did catch some of Being the Ricardos, and I really enjoyed it. I thought the actors that played Fred and Ethel Mertz or Vivian Vance, and I can't remember the actor's name, I thought they were real good, but I did
Oscar winner J.K. Simmons.
Oh yeah, he's in a lot of things. I should have.
He's the brown he's the yellow M&M.
Well, what about Dear Leader? Kevin, have you seen any of these movies?
Yes. I was not a fan of either of the 2 other films that we talked about, Up in the Sky or Don't Look Up. Don't Look Up.
Look Up.
Did not get it. I did not think it was at all on a par with the other Adam McKay work that I've enjoyed. And I thought that the humor in it was just redundant, repetitive, and not that smart. But I know that I stand on an island on this point because virtually everyone that I've seen on social media thought it was brilliant. And a lot of people that I'm seeing on real media are saying the same thing. As with Being the Ricardos, again, with all due respect, not to say anybody's right or wrong, I saw a different film, was not a fan, did not think that Nicole Kidman captured the role, thought that Javier Bardem gave a good performance, but did not embody the Desi Arnaz that I remember, both from that series and from his interviews on the Tonight Show and other talk shows.
I should say that is one thing I should also mention. I don't have those memories, right? So I only have memories of kind of watching I Love Lucy. I don't have the memories of Desi Arnaz, right? So
I remember him being interviewed, and I remember Lucille Ball being on these talk shows. And so I know how they spoke, and they didn't talk like that. Now, again, it's art, it's fiction, even though it's based on a true story. And you're right. You cut the creator some slack for that. The ending, which I will not spoil for people who haven't seen it yet, is ludicrous. The concept that anything like that could ever have happened is ludicrous. And one more thing. And again, I know I'm Mr. Negative on this, and that's okay. But everybody is talking about how great Simmons was. You know what? He captured that character by being himself. Simmons did the same thing that he's done in every freaky performance he's ever given, including the Farmers Insurance commercials. So the idea that he did some kind of a stretch, an acting stretch to bring William Frawley to life is nonsense. He was just delivering lines that, again, I don't think ever came out of that real person's mouth.
Gruff and exasperated.
Yeah, gruff and exasperated. So did it work? You know what? There were parts of the film. I mean, they certainly took on big issues like the blacklist and the sexual repression in the television industry in the 50s. Those were valid things to bring up. Their depiction of what it's like backstage on a sitcom is nothing like what I ever experienced and what I believe they experienced. You had in the movie.
I will agree with you on that, by the way.
Two people who were a writing team, not just writers on the same staff, but Bob Carroll and Madeline Q was, I'm blanking on her last name, were a writing team. And in the movie, they have them backstabbing each other and insulting each other. Every other line just wouldn't happen. I do want to say sitcoms are generally happy places.
I do want to say, just as a real quick insert there, just to throw this in, I thought it was really kind of neat, though, that the female writer that you're just talking about, the woman, what was her name?
Madeline Pugh.
Sorry, I thought it was so interesting that she went on to be one of the producers and writers for Alice, the very popular sitcom Alice, starring Linda Lavin.
Yeah.
And in the movie, she's portrayed by Linda Lavin.
Very interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that she had worked on that.
Yeah, she has a connection with Linda Lavin, and I think that was what it was. And I thought it was cool that Linda Lavin ended up playing her in this movie, who was Alice in sitcom.
And you know what? Madeline Pugh and Bob Carroll.
That's it, Madeline Pugh. But by the way, you're absolutely right, Kevin. You're not wrong about your assessment of it. The thing I would tell people watching it is that I found it an entertaining dream sequence. I don't find it an accurate biopic. Do you know what I mean? So it's like the Jobs movie that Aaron Sorkin did. I go, oh, it's kind of a neat fan fiction about these people in real life. You know what I mean? So I enjoy it in that respect. But if you're looking for like a factual movie or an accurate biopic, it's not it. It's more of a kind of nostalgic fan piece, right?
Yeah. But I am going to take the reins here and try to wind things down. And so I'm going to thank everybody for listening. First of all, Joe, you fit right in. And I had a blast having you on. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Yeah,
it was good to come on. I was a little nervous how I'd fit in coming on, but that's why I do the research. And a lot of it was just having fun and just, being respectful, knowing what you're going to talk about and not being a dick about it.
Didn't I promise you'd have a good time? Was I wrong?
100%. It was great.
Good. Anything you want to plug before we move on?
I think the kid fit like a glove, by the way. Just want to say.
I do too.
I would say just if you have any interest in wrestling, comedy, or MMA, go check out the Working Fans Podcast. We're on any major podcast provider and YouTube.
There you go. And we already plugged one of Ward's books, two novels that Ward has written. And so I'm going to plug one of my novels. It's the one that's already been published. It's called Super Vows. It's now available on Amazon. And you can find it on Amazon in Kindle form, in paperback, and in a couple of days, it's going to be in hardcover. And I'm kind of proud of all of that. So please go check out Super Vows. It won't break the bank, and I promise you a good read. Anything that anybody else wants to plug before we say goodnight?
Got a new beard. I'm trying to push that hard on the people. I've got
hashtag fuckable Santa.
I've got a new hashtag too.
So thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you again next time.